God hides his face. That's the pasuk, the verse above in 17. The moral distinction between these two states of affairs is spelled out by the medieval Jewish philosophers. When God punishes, he punishes only the guilty. When he withdraws his providence, he leaves man to chance, in Maimonides' phrase. At such time, in my words, all heck breaks loose. Even the innocent may suffer. For tragedy is then the result not of divine, but of human action.
That's a powerful thought, to be left to chance.
Yeah. That's the carry, that if we say things are carry or just chance, then God withdraws and says, see where chance, see where chance leads.
Interesting way to look at that phrase, God withdrew his presence.
Yeah.
And God help us if we're left to chance.
Hastir panai. He moves back.
Yeah.
And number 19, where was man? Eliezer Berkowitz, who was one of the Talmidim of the Sridei Eish, he chose this line of approach to the Holocaust. Seen in the religious context of freedom and responsibility, tells us not about God but about man. Right. For Berkowitz, Auschwitz represented the moral disintegration of Western civilization. Right. As I said before, Germany was the apex of Western civilization. It was the culmination of centuries of theologically inspired hatred of Jews as the bearers of God's word. It disclosed what had always been present as a possibility, that mankind, might choose ultimate evil. Chanan Wasserman was one of the great Roshei Yeshivas in Baranovich in Poland. He had been in the States raising money for the yeshiva, and they pleaded with him to remain safely in the States. And he insisted that he must go back to his children. He only had one child, or Simcha Wasserman, Zatzal, who was a Rav, and eventually came to Los Angeles and founded a yeshiva there, and was instrumental in Los Angeles being what it is today in terms of religious observance. Rav Elchanan, though, did not make it out alive. And he was taken to one of the forts in Lithuania, and he was murdered there, as were all those who were with him. And he gave a very, very rousing talk before he was, as they knew they were soon going to be killed. He gave a parable of a city person who came out to the farm, and he saw his farmer next door at a beautiful green field, and he saw him destroy it, plowing it up. He thought, why is he doing that? Why is he destroying such a beautiful green field? And then he saw that he started to water it and muddy it and throw seeds into it. I thought, he's really crazy. And then things started to grow. All of a sudden, the field was standing with grain. And it was beautiful. He said, oh, now I understand why he took down that grass. But then he comes down and he chops down all that grain. And then he starts to grind it up and he pulverizes it. And he turns it into a big mass of dough. And he said, he's crazy. Why is he destroying so much? But then he starts to fashion this dough into these beautiful, beautiful loaves. He says, oh, now I understand. And then he sees him fire up the ovens and about to put the bread into the fire. And he says, this person's berserk. He's a maniac. It's dangerous to live near him. And he moves back to the city. And he never saw the beautiful loaves that came out of the fire. Rav Chanan addressed God directly. That's what he said. That's the mashal, the parable of seeing destruction or seeing something and not understanding what it is. He addressed God directly. With fire you send destruction in our midst, and with fire you will rebuild the Jewish people. His last words to his students were, the fire is about to engulf our bodies. That very fire will return and build the house of Israel. And in 21, once again, Rabbi Sachs. Even if a backward-looking explanation in terms of sin and punishment failed to do justice with the tragedy, there's another traditional approach, namely to look forward and attempt to understand the Holocaust not in terms of divine punishments, but divine purpose. The Holocaust was not the end of the Jewish people. 3 years later, a no less epic event took place, the creation of the State of Israel. Emerging from the shadow of death, Jews have returned to the Promised Land after 2,000 years. And was that not precisely what the Torah had foretold? When all the blessings, and quote, when all the blessings and curses I've set before you come upon you, and you will take them to heart, wherever the Lord your God disperses you in the nations, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. He will bring you together again from all the peoples where the Lord has scattered you. The covenant had not been broken. It had been reaffirmed. In a similar vein, number 22, Eim Habanim Samecha, the decline that precedes redemption. The Maharal of Prague explains the reason for our troubles. The Maharal was in the 18th century, well before the Holocaust. But like again, we've said before, the Holocaust was not, for some it was viewed as worse than anything before. But our history, we born into this generation, were born into the anomaly of Jewish history. Right? The biggest thing I had to contend with was having eggs thrown at me on Halloween. Right, growing up in a certain area of New York City, right, and a few fistfights here or there. If I would beat a non-Jew in basketball, then it would turn into a fist fight. But the troubles as a nation, the Maharal explains, the pangs of Mashiach, of the Messiah, serve as the absence before the existence. Haheder kodem ha'avaya. The extent of the absence corresponds to the extent of the existence that will bestow upon us at the time of redemption. This is also found in the Siddur of the Yavitz. Greatness and prosperity generally develop following the despair, which is caused by enormous calamity. The same is true of existence, for one of its four causes is the absence which precedes it. Our sages say the chick grows when the egg decays. This explains how we, the chosen nation, have declined so drastically in the exile before reaching a state of tranquility and security. The last descent has been extremely difficult, proportioned to the absolute and everlasting good that will sprout after it. Hence, the Talmud states that when the Jews descend to the dust, when they ascend, it is up to the heavens. According to this, it is natural there be a great absence before our great existence, as is the case with all existence. In historical terms, the Holocaust was a nullification of the reality of life in exile. In fact, an absolute loss of life, in order that a new form of existence could arise, namely national existence in the land of Israel. Poland, the Jews were in Poland for close to 900 years. They would refer to Poland as a breakdown of two words. Po, lin. Po, here, lin. We will settle. We will remain here. This is where we will be. Certainly, the assimilated Jews of Germany considered Berlin the New Jerusalem. And they reformed the Siddur to take out any references of a return to Jerusalem. Why would anyone in their right mind want to leave this cultured, beautiful Berlin to dusty old Jerusalem? Berlin was the New Jerusalem. And I think after a Holocaust, as comfortable as we are here in America, we all want to make sure that our passports are up to date. Because we've learned that there is no safe, long-term existence for us in the most gracious and wonderful of countries, as the United States has been to us and continues to be to us. Again, last night I was talking to the person who's in charge of the ADL now, and just hearing a little bit of what goes on, even around us here in our bubble in the bubble, which is Irvine in the United States. Lastly, we'll conclude with this. In his writings and discussions on this subject, the Lubavitcher Rebbe rejected all theological explanations for the Holocaust. What greater conceit, what greater heartlessness can there be than to give a reason for the death and torture of millions of innocent men, women, and children? Can we presume that an explanation small enough to fit inside the finite bounds of human reason can explain a horror of such magnitude? We can only concede that there are things that lie beyond the finite ken of the human mind. Echoing his father-in-law, he would say, "It is not my task to justify God on this. Only God himself can answer what he allowed to happen. And when the only answer we will accept is the immediate and complete redemption that will forever banish evil from the face of the earth and bring to light the intrinsic goodness and perception and perfection of God's creation." To those who argue that the Holocaust disproves the existence of God or his providence over our lives, Lubavitcher Rebbe said, on the contrary, the Holocaust has decisively disproven any possible faith in a human-based morality. In pre-war Europe, it was the German people who epitomized culture, scientific advance, philosophic morality. And those very same people perpetrated the most vile atrocities known to human history. If nothing else, the Holocaust has taught us that a moral and civilized existence is possible only through the belief in and the acceptance of the divine authority. He also said our outrage, our incessant challenge to God of what has occurred, this itself is a most powerful attestation to our belief in him and our faith in his goodness. Because if we did not underneath it all possess this faith, what is it that we are outraged at? The blind workings of fate? The random arrangement of quarks that made up the universe? It is only because we believe in God, because we are convinced that there is right and there is wrong, and that right must and ultimately will triumph, that we cry out as Moses did, "Why, my God, have you done evil to your people?" The pasuk I quoted earlier. But the most important thing about the Holocaust is not how we do or do not understand it, nor even how we memorialize its victims, but what we do about it. If we allow the pain and despair to dishearten us from raising a new generations of Jews with a strong commitment to their Jewishness, then Hitler's final solution will be realized, God forbid. But if we rebuild, if we raise a generation proud of and committed to their Jewishness, we will have triumphed. So that, my friends, as I said, is an array of thoughts, perspectives, explanations, I don't know if I can use that word. Let's just say an array of thoughts and perspectives to help us try to wrap our minds around what happened. But I'd like to end off that our focus needs to be what happens, right, moving forward. We'll call it over here, my friends. HaShoah.
And of course, Israel is a country that is a miracle in itself.